Hello and welcome to the CAPE podcast. CAPE standing for the Child Abuse Prevention and Education Podcast. My name is Kristi McVie and I am an ex-West Australian police officer who spent 10 years with the police, where I was trained as a specialist child interviewer and a child abuse detective. This podcast is all about sharing what I learnt, saw and knew whilst investigating child sexual abuse in the police force. It is also about sharing the knowledge that I gained in that time that helped me with my own parenting of my then 2-year-old daughter. My mission is to help share my knowledge and to help you in your role as parents to keep your kids safe, along with guest experts in the field of child abuse prevention and education, both in person and online. Thank you so much for joining in on the fight to prevent child sexual abuse. Your kids will thank you for it. Hello and welcome back to the Kate podcast for another week. I am really excited to be talking with Kate Fylan. Fylan, is that right?
Yeah.
Yay. It's over in New South Wales. It's funny, Kate, I put out a big thing to LinkedIn. Hey, anyone want to be on my podcast? I've had such a great response, and Kate was one of those people who responded and said, yeah, I'd love to talk on your podcast. So I'm so grateful to all of you, especially because giving up an hour or so of your time to talk about this stuff. But it's encouraging to hear so many people who are advocating for what I'm advocating for, just so willing to give their time and to talk about this stuff so that parents and listeners of this podcast can get all of the information that they can get. So, Kate, you have a background in DV, child protection, sex assault, and all of the things for over 20 years, along with therapy and leadership. And basically, for me, talking to you, I think you might be a little bit of a thought leader in this space, in that you're trying to help a system that needs help right now because it is inundated and it's struggling. Both policing, child protection, all of the things are struggling right now. So I'm so grateful to talk to you today. I'm interested to see where this conversation goes. It could go anywhere. That's what I love about my podcast, is that it's got no plan. It just goes where it goes, and we have awesome conversations because of it. So, Kate, for the listeners of the Kate podcast, could you just explain a little bit about your background, where you started, where you're from, and where you're going?
Yeah, thanks, Kristi. And thank you for having me, or as we say in Gaelic, Gurb Maha. I'm on Gaia land today, as you said, is in New South Wales, northern beaches of Sydney. Originally from Ireland. I'll start meandering way Irish like a good story. So
I'll try and keep you on track.
Yes, time is not of our essence. So, I'm always open to being told to, drift a different way. Look, I'm a qualified social worker, qualified in Ireland as a social worker, and then about 5 years later as a play therapist, one of the first cohort of play therapists that came out of Irish master's training. And I started as a fresh 22-year-old in frontline child protection in initially Dublin's inner city, and then did some kind of more regional remote work as well. And in child protection was seeing all aspects of, concerns for children, but particularly became interested and became forensically trained to interview children where there had been allegations or disclosures of sexual assault and physical assault. So that kind of began my kind of journey in terms of hearing and understanding that kind of more nuanced work in child protection, and then training as a play therapist, really serving children that had experienced primarily sexual assault. Then came here to Australia and worked in a child protection unit, which is a forensic medical response to sexual assault and physical abuse, and also provided therapy to children as well. And part of that work was working with parents too, and kind of seeing and understanding pre my parent days of, what a impact it is for a parent, and holding that space for their child when this has happened to them. And kind of really beginning that kind of window into, oh wow, that's so much for parents. And continued in child protection, did some leadership work, and then had 3 of my own children in 4 years. So
wow. You need a medal.
Yeah, as you do, you think it's a good idea,
They're so cute when they're little, you just think, oh yeah, let's go again. And then you're like, oh.
Yeah.
They sucker you in.
They do, that newborn smell, and just the way they, and then through my engagement, then I went primarily into private practice for 10 years, working with specifically with children through play therapy who were experiencing or either had escaped from domestic violence with the safe parent, which primarily is the mum. And there was also children who were referred who had childhood sexual abuse experiences as well. And it was through that work then when my children, kind of entered the preschool and school system, that when parents hear what you do, often the conversation would be at the school gate, how do I talk to my children about this without scaring, as we say, the bejesus out of them? And then really seeing from my work that I knew what the risks were. It's who you let into your home. That sounds very blaming. Who comes into your home? Whereas really getting a window that parents still were sitting in the stranger danger space.
Yeah.
So really kind of wanting to have that conversation and equip parents. And then moving into DV work as well, really helping parents and children, recover and understand the dynamics, particularly of coercive control, which has just been legalized here. It's literally 26 days old in New South Wales as an offence.
Yeah.
And now primarily a lot of my work is in that space with children and their parents around, their moms usually, in post-separation coercive control. So and understanding how we, parent children, particularly boys as well, how gendered parenting is, and how, now moms are, as my eldest is a boy, has entered high school. Now moms are approaching me. How do I talk to my teen boys about gender, about, what's seen on social media, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So
those conversations should have been had. You know what I mean? Like in toddlerhood and ongoing non-stop conversations. And I'm so glad that people are picking those conversations up wherever they have them. But really, we know, you and I know from our experiences, if you have these conversations and lots of little conversations over a long time, you have so much influence over your kids that when they do get to high school and they're being influenced from outside sources all of a sudden, then they're less likely to be influenced by them.
Yeah, or like they're more inclined then if to have that conversation with you, and then it's a real conversation of curiosity and learning, and they also know that you're and that you're going to be not saying don't do it, which obviously in your head you are going on the post, but it's more like, okay, tell me what's interesting you in it, or what do you think you're getting out of it?
You're going to ask more open questions about it. You're not going to be so like taken off out of awares, like, oh my God, my kid is talking about, whatever topic that's coming in front of you. Like I know you as a parent and me as a parent, I've had like conversations with my daughter where I'm screaming inside my head. It's like, fuck, like what the fuck? And then I'm like on the outside providing this very calm parent. What do you think about that? What's your thoughts about that? And inside you're freaking the fuck out. Like,
and like us as social workers, we have something what we call clinical supervision, and that was one of my early learning days as a fresh-faced 20-something-year-old. Mary Jo McFay is an amazing child protection, child advocate here in Sydney. She happens to be Irish as well, and she was my supervisor, and she's like, now, Kate, we need to talk to you about how much contempt you wear on your face, that when you hear something, it's just like right there. And I'm like, so that was like a big
learning how to keep your face straight and not freaking show what you're thinking. That was my problem.
Clenched closed look of,
I had the same problem when I was a police officer. I had a sergeant say to me, Kristi, you can literally read "get fucked" on your face every time you think something. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, you need to learn to, and this was really early on in my career. He's like, you need to learn how to control your face, because if you're not, even though you're not saying it out loud, your face is saying it.
Yes, I was saying we're like tracking so many similar paths, right?
It was an interesting conversation, and I was like, surely not. And then someone else said to me, Kristi, honestly, that sergeant that just like told you off, your face was like literally like get fucked. And I was like, really? Oh my gosh. And then so I got better at it as I got more practice. It does take practice. This stuff does take practice.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it does. It takes that moment to kind of go, oh, okay, I'm making that face. Do you know what I mean? So, and then it's
Or I'm
knowing whether,
freaking out.
yeah, and then
Am
it's
I
like,
showing it?
yeah, yeah. And then it's like knowing whether you kind of need to acknowledge that and say,
Mm,
okay, yeah, no, what you just told me, I just need a moment to kind of, I think I just looked really, and doing that with your kids as well. So then
yeah.
it
Yep.
doesn't shut down that moment of where they see like,
For sure.
oh, fuck, mom's got her, oh, fuck me face on. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, okay, so like, just
I
give me
love
it.
it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of having those moments to be able to kind of acknowledge your imperfectness because,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
it's normal.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
so normal. And I think people like myself and yourself, we've had a lot of practice with other people. So we don't react like, we've heard it 100 times. So when your kid finally comes to you and says something that probably throws you off balance a bit, we've had a bit more practice. Doesn't mean that we still don't, not like when it's your kid, you're still going to react sometimes. But like you said, I've gone back and said, look, I don't think I handled that very well. Or my daughter has called me out and gone,
Yeah.
why would I come to you if you kept losing it over something small like this, And I'm like, you know what, you're 100% right. And just being able to have those conversations to begin with is really
Yeah.
important.
And it really shows as well that, your daughter or other children being able to give feedback to a safe adult is a positive, and
Mm.
you're modeling that kind of capacity to, I'm really good at repair because yes, we do F this up really,
Well,
yeah.
I think I don't know about your childhood, but my childhood definitely didn't prepare me for any of this shit. And so the fact that, I'm very good at repair because I know that sometimes what comes out of my mouth is not what I'm thinking, but it's like an automatic response. And that happens to I think all
Hmm.
parents are struggling
Hmm.
with that at one
Yeah.
stage or another. And so
Yeah.
I've had to get really good at apologizing and going, hey, like even yesterday, I had something happen. My daughter rang me. She was on a careers camp and she rang me, and I could tell that she's medicated for ADHD. She was hyper, like really hyper, and I didn't have the energy for it right at the second. And so I gave her a really, like, not the tone she was looking for.
Yeah.
She called me out on it, and I had to like rein myself back in, my annoyance back in, because I was like, I don't have time for this. I'm busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I reined my annoyance back in, apologized, and said, look, sorry. Tell me what you want to tell me. I'm really interested. You deserve you called
Yeah.
me for a reason. How about you tell me? And even though she was annoyed at me for, not reacting the right way at the time, we then repaired that and went on. And, that's a really important practice in having children, because a lot of the time, like, they're individuals. We can't control them. We can't get angry at them when they lose it, because we lose it too. And we expect so much from kids.
We really, really do expect, and placing it kind of in the science and the practice is their brains are nowhere near developed. And
Mm,
in terms of, like, say, the prefrontal cortex, where all that decision making, that higher functioning,
yeah,
like most people are really shocked when you're 25 to 28 before
yeah.
that's fully complete. So we do
Even
expect.
later for children with ADHD.
Yeah, neurodivergency, then adding
Yeah,
that into it as well, and then adding, childhood experience too
yeah.
into as well.
Any
So,
traumas?
yeah, we really, really do. Like, I don't think we should underestimate children and kind of diminish their capacity either. I think we need to do that in a really giving them agency and opportunities within
Yeah,
a scaffold that understands that, where is their stage of development and what are their needs in that point.
yeah. So interesting that you mentioned that, because my daughter is so capable. She's such a capable kid. But now and again, she is like completely, like today, she's exhausted, she's mentally fatigued, her social battery's low. I think she might be a little bit iron deficient at the moment. Like,
Mm,
so much is going on underneath, right? So I was joking about this with my husband like this morning, because I rang him and told him what had happened. I had to literally gentle parent my child this morning, because she was so, like, she's like, oh, and I was like, and it's so not her on an average day. So when she does
yeah,
it, I'm like, have to, like, give myself a little bit of a tap and go, come on, she just needs you to be soft
yeah,
right now. So in the end, I had to talk. I was like, do you want me to talk to you like a little girl,
yeah,
like as
yeah,
a joke? And she was like, yes. And
yeah,
she just needed me to baby her for 20 minutes, hug her, give her some space, like give her some comfort, because she even though she's 16, she's so capable. She's really great at a lot of things. She's really confident and competent most of the time. There's times when she just needs me to baby her.
Yeah.
And I think I didn't have that growing up. I don't know about you, but I didn't have any of that growing up. I was expected to be an adult from freaking 7.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's really hard to stop and go, actually, she's still a kid.
Yeah.
And she's still developing and she still needs support. And it's not my job to just dump and run. Like,
Yeah.
that's your problem. You deal with it. Like,
Yeah.
I became a parent. I need to parent.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think listening to you as well, like then knowing that, you know, experiences, and that when you become an adult, then being expected to, you know, not, yeah, that hearing you saying there might be points when your daughter is 30 and still needs to be babied
Yeah.
for that small moment, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It
It's
doesn't
only for
mean
a
that.
short time.
Yeah.
And
And
I
the
mean, you
honor
never
to be
stop
able
being a
to do
parent.
that. Yeah, the honor to be able to do that as a parent. Like, don't get me wrong, like there's days where I'm just like, you know, done with it. But that concept, you know, that yeah, filling them with that to know that, you know, and I've also worked with perpetrators of, or men that choose to use violence as well. And some of my work with them is around speaking to them about their parenting, because that is
Of
often
course.
the input. And to use this exact, the question that I use is, if you continue how you are now, will your son pick up the phone and tell and call you when he's 25? And they'll say, oh yeah. And I said, would they call you if something was upsetting them? And then you hear the, oh no. And I said, what about if they were celebrating something, if they'd, you know, got an award, or they had, you know, graduated, or, you know, they, whatever it was, would they call you then? And it's a no. And for me, it's that, in, you know, instilling that in my children, that, yeah, the idea of them not being able to call me when they're 25, whether they're happy or sad or just
Whatever.
whatever in between, you know,
Life.
is, yeah, just, you know, adulting is not what it's made out to be some days, you know. And
No, definitely not.
yeah, having that kind of knowing now that we can't expect our children when they're adults to, you know, want to be with us if we're not giving them those moments of what they need in those different times of what they need.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And one of the things that I think about sometimes is if they can't trust, if kids can't trust you with the small stuff, they're not going to trust you with the big stuff. And so, and I'm talking small stuff like the little tantrums that they might have. You know, she's 16, and in my mind, I'm like, man, I was kicked out at home at 16. I had to freaking parent myself at 16. Why can't she do it? But at the same time, why did, you know, it wasn't
Yeah, why
okay that,
should you have had to
why
do it?
have, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So my experience shouldn't be her experience.
yeah,
What happened to me, I shouldn't be forcing and pushing on that onto her just because that happened to me. And I have this conversation with my husband as well. Like he's neurodivergent. He's got, you know, he's just been diagnosed with autism. And he goes, oh, well, I can do it, you know, because he's struggling with that age thing. And I'm like, yeah, but should you have to? Do you think that maybe you might have not been so, he was quite delinquent at that age, like maybe not seeking those attention seeking behaviors that you had, you know, looking
yeah.
for any kind of attention
Connection.
and
Yeah,
connection. Maybe you wouldn't have done some of those things
yeah,
for close to 20 years.
yeah.
So, you know, like there's so much in this and we could go on forever. I wanted to touch back on the coercive control stuff. So you've just mentioned it's been legislated that, and it's now illegal to use coercive control. Could you break down coercive control for me? And then I'd love to talk about how we can like talk about this with our kids, because I talk about this stuff with my daughter all the time. I have been since she was very little and had conversations. So coercive control, what is it?
Yeah, it's quite a big term when you kind of break it down. It's something we've really known about, particularly in the DV space for many, many years, but it didn't have that kind of concept. It kind of is like there's a legal term for it, obviously, like around terror, instilling terror to the point that you can control somebody's every movement, nearly their every thought. But for women and children that I work with, it's around being on eggshells all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's around that feeling of when is going to be the next And look, there often isn't a need to ever use physical violence, because your level and impact of fear into it's gendered. There obviously is male victims. However, it's primarily women and children that are the primary victims in the DV space. So I don't want to alienate any of your listeners who are male and have had their own experiences. And my work has been with women and children. And it's instilling, so like, to use a parenting example, so imagine you can hear your partner reprimanding your son for spilling milk. And he's having a go at him, really shaming, putting him down. You can hear your son crying, and you stand and make the decision, do I go in there and step in and say, I'll clean it up, it's all good, knowing that could escalate the situation to a point that he continues shaming your son and calling him, whatever name, and that you've babied him and that you've mothered him too much? Or do you not go in there knowing that your son is on his own and isn't getting supported, and knowing how impacting that is? Or do you wait till later and try and go in and repair later? These are the constant kind of decisions around coercive control. That's a parenting one. Other examples are around your movement, who you're seeing. Technology has really supported the capacity to be able to minute by minute know where your partner is.
Tracking them,
Tracking, constantly texting. I know who you're with. We've agreed not to do that. It's when it comes down to it, it's a woman that I worked with really instilled in me the belief, because she said to me, now that I'm telling you that seems unbelievable, that it's believing the unbelievable. It is nearly so unbelievable that it's unbelievable. The level of fear that can be instilled from a look, from a constant, if you're constantly watched, if you're constantly berated, shamed, and
who you
then
can spend time with, who you're not, when you can go to the shops, money,
what shops you can go to,
what clothes you can wear,
what shops you can't go to. And then, then other stuff, then, tech helps. So then, if you buy something, it can be set up to go to his phone. So then that he knows what you've bought, how much you've spent. You've spent more than what we agreed. So then you have to sit and listen to, constant barrage of, and then it's, gaslighting is a known term now. It's that kind of constant, no, that didn't happen. That's not the way that happened. So then the energy that it takes to survive in that environment is just so impacting for women and for children. And some of the children that I've worked with, like one, if they're post-separation, the children not being able to say hello to their mothers when they're on contact with their dads. And they'll see each other and both of them will not say hello to each other in order to keep the child safe.
And it becomes a decision whether you start something with that person, because they're obviously, it's going to cause an argument, it's going to cause that constant putting down and being mean. But if you're not there to protect the child, then the child's going to cop it. Your mum does this, your dad does this, and that's a form of abuse.
And not just the argument is not not that there's a high level of ignoring as well, for days and days and days on end. And living with somebody that's ignoring with you because they're annoyed with you, but more than just annoyed, instilling control and
instead of just talking it out.
It is. It's a real belief system of entitlement that I can behave the way I want to
but
behave.
They can't.
And an aspect of coercive control, which is physical, is in the professional sector, we call it non-fatal strangulation. But it's any, when you say strangulation or choking to a woman or a teen, they might say no, but it's any pressure to the neck. So it could be, an arm, it could be pressure from behind, it could be, whereas when we think about strangulation, we have an idea
two hands around a neck kind of thing.
But it's any pressure that restricts breathing. What's coming out of research now is that women that experience ongoing incidences of that, and it's also coming out of the younger generation. It's happening in sex, during sex as well. It's replicating similar brain injuries that have come out of, say, footballers that have had regular concussions, because each moment of restriction drains the brain of oxygen, and repeatedly, there's acquired brain injuries that come that affect memory,
Yep.
headache.
Not to mention trauma affects memories, and
Yeah,
trauma affects, cognitive function as well. Ongoing trauma such as, coercive control and that fear-based anxiety that comes from being, bullied and repeatedly put down, and, having that hypervigilance all the time. It's similar to what happened with me in the police, constant hypervigilance,
constantly being on.
constantly being on. That's what's happening in these relationships. So
Yeah,
therefore the brain never gets a chance to release, that cortisol and all of that. And so then you do have cognitive decline, you do have issues with memory. I have terrible issues with memory now. I could remember everything you told me, and I could easily verbatim repeat it back to you. Now I'm like, ugh, I can't word right now. And, it's really frustrating,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
can understand that from what I know. And the strangulation thing, in my career, I would go and, talk to someone. I'd get a phone call. We'd go and attend to domestic violence because a neighbour's heard them screaming or heard something. And you'd turn up there, and, both parties were there. And when you got to it, there would be bruising, or sometimes there's no marks, but you would know something's happened. And constantly, and this was before it was actually said to anyone, or I was ever told this or anything, but I used to say, strangulation's just one step down from murder. I'd say when someone puts their hands around your neck or someone touches your neck, they have the opportunity to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're being strangled, personally, I likened it to attempted murder.
Quickly interrupting this episode to let you know that Kristi has a whole library full of resources to support you. If this podcast hits home for you and you want to learn more about cyber safety, abuse awareness and prevention, and how you can protect your children, head to the link in the show notes where you can access free downloads, informative guides, and courses relating to these topics. You can also order Kristi's book, Operation KidSafe, A Detective's Guide to Child Abuse Prevention. If you want to join the fight against child sexual abuse, you can support Kristi to reach a wider audience by leaving a review on this podcast or sharing it with your community.
I'm so glad you did, because if you look at the timelines it's within a minute, depending on the pressure that's applied, is restricting breathing, and then depending on how long the pressure is, and it's so portrayed now, saying that it's so risky, because we have the recent survey, I don't know if it's in New South Wales.
Yeah, 1 in 6.
Yeah. Obviously that was national, so that's great. But it's our young people that are doing it that we're going back to, their brains aren't developed. So
It's no difference. It's no difference, right? And like, think about it. I don't know if you had this in Ireland, but when I was growing up, there was nangs. Those little, and kids do it now. They're little gas canisters that they suck on, and it gives them a high for a few seconds.
Yeah.
That's depleting the brain of oxygen, right? They create brain injuries. This is the exact same thing, just it's now someone else, strangling, putting pressure on the neck and creating that blood rush or whatever reason. But it's because of pornography we're seeing this, because it's depicted in pornography and there's no safe way to strangle someone or to block their airway. No safe way.
No. And it's a New South Wales base, but for your listeners, they're probably able to Google it. It Left No Marks is a campaign that's happening in New South Wales at the moment, particularly aimed at, say, sexual strangulation or non-fatal strangulation or sexual choking. And there's some really good resources that you can, that it might be helpful for parents to have a look at, to know, to have the conversations.
Yeah.
But like the thing about pornography is as well that it's really important to have these there's always hope. Like, I know we're talking about something that, and this is what often happens to parents, going, oh my goodness, like, how can I let my child go out? Do you know what I mean?
How can they can never date ever?
I'm homeschooling. No, I tried that in COVID. It was awful. It is really having these conversations really early. It is really having conversations that are, open around safety, around how your body feels, around regulation, around, that not everyone is safe. And it's how you have that conversation and that tone, and that doesn't create that hysteria for children. Having it really young and having the conversation, like the average age is 9 when a child is first exposed to pornography, whether it's from a friend, from Googling pussy or something like that, that is,
boobs.
Yeah, whatever, you know, and it's having those conversations around, both with boys and with girls, because it's looking like it is boys that is doing the non-fatal strangulation and the more physical stuff, the more violent stuff and that's what's predicted in pornography.
Yeah.
This isn't real. This isn't, it might look like it is on screen, but this
Yeah.
is, you know, this is not real. And, you know, the size of the penises isn't real, and they all come in different shapes and sizes, and that's
Yeah.
okay too.
Yeah.
So they're not feeling like that this is something that they have to conform to, or feeling like, oh, mine is much smaller, or whatever it
Well,
is.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of pressure for young people, because when I was growing up, we didn't have it in our faces everywhere we went. We didn't see it on TikTok or on Facebook, or we didn't have it in our faces. So we were none the wiser until something happened, till our first sexual experience, or someone talked about it or whatever. And now it's in their face every day. And unless we as parents spend time to counteract that influence, that outside influence, you know, our young men are feeling inadequate. They are feeling like they can't fit some sort of mold. I actually had a 13 or 14-year-old boy contact me, and he was talking to me about the fact that, and again, I think I've spoken about this previously, I get lots of young teen men contact me because
That's awesome.
I talk very openly about sextortion. And when I'm talking about sextortion, and like, you know, so generally they'll reach out to me because they don't feel that they can talk to their parents or a safe adult. So I'm sitting there going, oh, why are these poor young guys being left high and dry with this information? And one of the young men was saying to me, you know, I've got all these friends, and I don't want anyone to know that I've been sextorted. And, you know, I was trying to explain to him, I'm like, well, actually, you know, he sounded like a really decent young man. And I said to him, you know, girls, real girlfriends, the ones that aren't behind a screen, they are screaming out for boys to talk to them like normal humans.
Yeah.
I was giving him dating advice, basically. I was basically saying to him, just talk to the girls in your school like they're human. Don't treat them poorly, and you will have dates out the wazoo.
Yeah,
And I said, you
beautiful.
don't need someone behind a screen, like pretending to be a girl, which is probably some, you know,
It's not.
it's not who we think they are. They're not real
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
They're faking it. And, you know, but it looks so real that they think they are. And I said, you know, just talk to the people around you and be a good person, and you'll find that you won't have trouble. And, you know, most, and my daughter being 16, I'm kind of got an inside to this. You know, she's like, Mum, like, teens don't talk to each other anymore.
Yeah.
It's all through Snapchat. It's all through messages. You know, if you even suggest hanging out in real life, people are like, oh, that, like, they'll cancel on you in the last minute, because it's almost like they're scared to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And she goes, it's really scary.
Yeah, I literally said that to my partner this week when we've got two in primary, and the eldest has just started high school, and we're walking past the bus stop, and all the kids are like on their
and they're
phones.
probably standing next to each other, messaging each other.
And I was like, oh my, because I had to get in a train in rural Ireland to go from, you know, from there to the main town to go to, we called it secondary school. And that was the highlight of the day, the train ride
I
home
know,
and the
hanging out
train
with
ride
people.
into school. Like, it was like, you know, because then you had, I'm like, what's happened? It's, you know,
We've
but
lost connection, but that's why
Yeah.
young people are getting caught out in these sextortion schemes. That's why they're getting caught out. And this is why we have to counteract it with how much we talk to our young people, so that they know that what's real and what's not real, so that they can understand that all of this stuff, like my daughter is able to critically understand that, you know what, this is actually not healthy. Like, we talk, you know, that was just another conversation we had, you know, do you think, and it's not like I sit there and lecture my daughter, I sit there and go, do you think that this is healthy? Like, the fact that people can't, you know, sit next to each other and have a conversation. Do you think that's healthy or unhealthy? You know, how do you think that, you know, what could happen? Like, you know, and I just have the, you know, just talk to her. And I've been doing that since she was such a little kid, right? But going back to coercive control, how do parents bring this up with their kids? Like, and where should we be having these conversations? Like, when and where?
Yeah, look, I think as well, going back to, and not to panic any parent that isn't starting at scratch with a 3-year-old, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like the ideal time to start talking about this stuff, or not coercive control. You're not going to sit down and go, coercive control is X, Y, Z. But you know what I mean? Like, when you have kids, you can, you know, if you're listening to this and you're a newborn parent, you know what, you guys have got leaps and bounds on us.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Lauren, take our wisdom. Well, I don't know if it's wisdom, but take maybe our mishaps and mistakes, and
Yeah.
but it is really about how parenting is really gendered, and how we parent boys and how we parent girls is so different. And that's due, I'll get really, theoretical patriarchy, socialization, and how, boys are viewed and how girls are viewed. And it's really allowing from that space boys to express, to have feelings. And like patriarchy doesn't just, support and enable, say, coercive control and DV, but it also has impacts in the mental health space for men.
Correct.
Also for dads as well. There's way, parenting is gendered, that it's primarily still the mother's
role.
responsibility.
Yep.
But now we have a whole generations of dads that want to be really involved, but their access to, support and
yeah.
learning, and, learning how do I do it different to what I experienced, like that is not as open as what it could be. So I think that's kind of trajectory where that's my,
Well, just sitting back and, when
Yeah.
wherever you're at, just sit back and have a think, what have I been taught by my family, society? What do I like and what don't I like? Because I can sit there and for hours and contemplate that question. And, with my own daughter, especially, especially when she started going through puberty and she was questioning why she had to cover up. Silly thing, not silly, because there's a lot of pressure on young girls, especially, but why did she have to all of a sudden cover up when she got boobs? And I'm talking about just by, and this is I'll quickly tell this story. Her grandmother used to have a yearly trip with her to like a hotel for 2 nights, and they used to have this little nana granddaughter trip, right? And then she went through puberty around 10. She started early puberty. And then so she was getting like little breast buds, and, she was starting to look more woman like girl, growing up. And my mother-in-law, God bless her, but, it's what she was taught, was like, you need to cover up. There's men looking at you. And my daughter rang me in tears at 10 or 11. I can't remember. It was it was around that time. Rang me in tears going, why do I have to cover up? It's not and this was my 10-year-old. So this is what I'm talking about. When you talk about this stuff and you question things and you teach your kids to question it, she said to me, why do I have to cover up? I'm not the one doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Why do I have to, it's not my fault that they're looking at me. They should stop looking.
Yeah, they should.
And I was like, I know, sweetheart. And I ended up saying something to my mother-in-law and saying, it's not her problem. You shouldn't guilt her into feeling like she has to change because men can't control themselves.
Yeah.
On the other flip side,
or they can control themselves because they'll do it with different people. Who it is that they're going to. Yeah.
I mean, this is just one example, and this is an example from my own life, but I'm imagining that anyone listening to this, any parent that's hearing this, you have had similar experiences in your life where you could have a conversation with your own children about it, right? And I use real life examples with my daughter always have, always will. And even when I have grandkids, maybe one day I'll probably do the same. I used real life examples, and I would say, do you think that's okay? Do you think that's right? Do you think that we could do it better? We being a society, we being mum and dad, we being a family, like it doesn't matter. But that's the gendered stuff. Like really sit back and have a think about what unwritten rules are we buying into?
Yeah, exactly. And then as they get kind of older into teen years, there's a particular shift for boys. Noble is her surname, and I think it's Nicole or Natalie she's an American psychologist who's done work into boys and gender. And a piece of research she's done is asking 11, 12-year-old boys to describe their best friend. And when they do, they talk about, oh, he's brilliant, I love him, he's great at handstands, or oh, he scored the best goal, and then she re-asks them at 15, and the difference is I shouldn't be using all these curse words, but that's what they name. And that like tenderness is gone by the time they're that age. And then I see it as well
Question.
see it as well in he's just turned 13, and, being able to connect. So we'd school holidays here last week, and we'd gone to the pool, and I was hanging out with the two younger ones, and he wanted to then engage, but then he just kept splashing me in the face with water. And it was only, I kept saying, stop doing that. It's really annoying. And then I copped it after when he didn't do it 3 times. I was like, oh, do you want me to come and hang out with you? Do you want to
Yeah.
have it? Because it was a whirlpool. I was like, do you want to have a race? And he's like, yeah. And okay, we went and did it.
Ah.
And then it was afterwards, I said to him, if you want me to hang out with you, it's not okay to do it that way. It is okay to say to me, hey, do you want to come and,
Have a race, play out. Can we hang out? I don't
yeah,
think young people, I've had this happen with my own daughter, really. I don't think young people sometimes realize what they want.
yeah, they don't know.
So the behavior is behavior is the language, right? So
Yeah,
it's so cool that you picked up that he just wanted some time with his mum, right?
yeah,
And that's all
yeah,
he really was trying to get. But because he was doing it in a way that was like quite annoying, you're like, but you clocked it and you worked it
yeah,
out. But like my daughter does things like that all the time. Like she's whinging about something, and then I'm like, do you need a hug?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Would you like a hug? And sometimes she goes no, and I'm like, you need one. And
yeah,
and then I'm like, is it okay if I hug you? Because I need a hug. And
yeah,
and then
yeah.
she's like, yeah. One thing I've learned about, especially preteens, teens, they will say no when they mean yes.
Mean yes, yeah, yeah.
They're like
And
fighting it. And then you're like, and once you've had a hug and you've, especially if it's more than 20 seconds and you've had let that whatever out, the mood, everything shifts.
yeah, and having a giggle about, is this the no where it means yes, or is this
Yeah.
the no that means no? Do you know what I mean? So having that kind of, and also around that age as well, is the capacity to be not accountable. So it's like, oh
Yeah.
no, I did the dishwasher. No, your brother did it. Um, you just told me that you did and instead of getting into the, oh my God, he's lying to me, do
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
okay, I get you don't want to do the dishwasher, but instead of telling me like that you did it when you didn't, just say, I didn't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
I wanted to get out of it. So it's like having that kind of building that accountability and
Yeah.
responsibility.
I like that.
Because that's kind of, not that I'm saying that everyone that engages in that is going to be coercive controlling, but they are
No.
the kind of, little moments to
Yeah.
kind of, to give them those skills that,
That's
yeah,
right. That's right. Because if they've never had accountability in their childhood, why are they going to be accountable when they're an adult? It doesn't
yeah,
just
it's not going to happen.
flick on and all of a sudden you're very whatever child becomes a respectful, accountable,
Functioning.
functioning adult. You know what? We got to do the work.
Yeah, yeah,
But coercive control, you mentioned about talking about those gendered roles, talking about accountability, creating that accountability in in that framework in your parenting. I remember when my daughter was, I reckon 8 or 9, and she was starting to have and it's funny, and unless you work in this space, I don't think you realize, parents don't realize, they just think, oh, that kid's being a little shit, or, if they've been a horrible friend. I used to say that. I'd be like, your friend isn't being very nice. And anyway, but my point is that when we talk about, I was talking about coercive control at 9. I wasn't using that language. I'd be saying, it's not, do you think it's okay for your friends to guilt you into doing things? Do you think it's okay if you make your friends feel guilty if they don't want to do something? I was creating that accountability, that thought
yeah.
process, that critical thinking, because I know from her experience, from watching her interact, that stuff starts pretty young, both in friendship groups. You can be seeing this stuff happening in friendships.
And I think as well, coercive control is an adult decision to control someone, and it's a conscious decision. However, I don't think we're skilling our children to have and cope with when things don't go the way that they want them to go. So if they feel left out, how are they managing that? How are they
Yeah.
getting that bump? If someone doesn't want to play with you, that's okay. That's their choice.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they're never going to want to play with you again, but it's having that conversation to acknowledge, oh, okay, I could see you felt left out. Yeah, that mustn't have felt, how was that? or and having that conversation so that they know that, you know, there's a bit of muscle there that can kind of manage and respond to that, but also saying what you're saying, that it isn't okay to ignore somebody because they didn't do what you wanted them to do. It's okay to say to them, I didn't like it when you did that.
Yeah.
And that's okay to say. That's not being, I think we've really kind of gone that we don't skill our children or as adults to be able to. It reminds me of growing up in Ireland is a very front of shop kind of, you know, you don't say, you don't,
Yeah.
you know, we're a colonized people and then the Catholic Church, you talk about people behind their back as opposed to being able to kind of say,
Confront them.
yeah, like respectfully, do you know what I
Yes.
mean? And say
There
that,
is a way to do it.
yes,
It's a
yeah,
skill, believe
yeah,
it or
yeah,
not.
yeah. And I think it's around your intent, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So, you know, are you intending to, you know, is there
Hurt
moments
or
that you can
control
kind of,
someone.
or that you let go to the keeper because you're like, I don't want to cause that
Yeah.
disruption or that, you know, disrepair? Or is there moments where, no, I didn't really like that and that's not okay. And this could be, you know, a learning moment for that person, or this is going to stew inside me and I'm going to struggle not to be able to be snappy with that person. And that's not being the responsible kind of, you know, kind person. So it's those moments to be able to say, oh, look, you know, I didn't really like it when that happened. This, you know, I felt this is how I experienced it. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's skills that go into work life, they go into adult
Yeah.
life. And if they're a muscle that you use all the time, or you've started using really
Or you've
young, then
practiced it.
yeah, yeah,
All
yeah,
of this stuff requires practice. Like, for
yeah,
instance, no one just wakes up one day and goes, I can talk to people about what I want. And especially if, you know, you come, and I can speak from experience. I wasn't allowed to have a voice as a child. What I wanted didn't matter, right?
yeah,
So it's taken a lot of energy to get to the point, and I guess policing probably helped to get to the point where I was like, this is not okay with me. This is, and to learn how to have confrontation and to be okay with confrontation. Mind you, I think I was always quite confrontational because I used to stand up for other people all the time when they were being bullied. But, you know, it's something that I helped develop in my daughter. And I didn't realize at the time that's what I was doing. But, like, for instance, and this is just like some of the stuff I did with my daughter, is if she had a problem with her dad because he has a different parenting style, she doesn't like when he says certain things. And even when she was a really little kid, right? She would come to me and go, Mum, I don't like what Dad just said to me. And I would say, well, sweetheart, you need to tell Dad. Oh, I don't want to. He'll tell me off, right? I used to go, I would hold her hand, or I
yeah,
would be right with her, and I would say to my husband, I have something to say. And I would be like eyeballing him, going, you're going to listen to what she has to say, right? And you know, he was learning as well. So I
yeah,
got to give it to him. But I'd say something to say. She wants to tell you how she feels. And you know, and she would go, you know, those first few times I would have to have a conversation first with him and say,
yeah, yeah,
listen,
yeah,
you stuffed up here, like,
yeah,
this isn't okay. I'm going to bring her in and you're going to have a talk, and she's going to tell you how she feels, because it's important that she tells you how she feels. And then I would stand there and go, okay, tell Dad what you told me. And she would sit there, and she, you know, when it was really little, she'd just go, Daddy, I don't like how you said this to me.
yeah,
This made me feel sad. Simple as that. And then as she's aged, and when she got, you know, was having trouble with friends, I would say, you know, that's not okay. Friends, you know, friends should accept you for whenever. You should accept friends whenever. You know, do you want help, you know, having a conversation with them? And, you know, and I
beautiful.
would facilitate that conversation if I could. Sometimes she would let things ride and we would just get on with it. But, you know, just this week she had an issue with a friend who said something not intentionally, and she could see that it wasn't an
Yeah,
intentionally hurtful thing, but it hurt her feelings and she didn't like how she'd done it. She said, you know, she did it in front of everyone and it
yeah,
embarrassed me. I wish it had been in person, because if she had said it to me in person, it wouldn't have embarrassed me. I would have received it better. And so
yeah,
she went to her and said, look, pulled her aside and said, hey, when you said that in front of everyone, I understand what you were trying to say, and you didn't mean to hurt my feelings, but you hurt my feelings because you did it in front of everyone. Could you please not do that again? You know, and
beautiful.
how much of a skill that is. But this didn't happen overnight. This is like
Yeah,
many little tiny conversations in that time.
yeah. And again, for the people listening whose parents or children are teens already, you can start this now. Do you know what I
Yes,
mean? Like, just because you
exactly.
haven't done it when you're, you know, if they're not, you know, 6 months
Little.
old, then
Yeah,
you've got like,
exactly. You
you
start
know,
wherever they're at.
yeah, start it.
It's
Do you know
better
what
to
I
have
mean?
it now than to like look back and go, oh, I so wish I had have had that conversation with them.
Yeah, and look, you know, parents might say, "Oh God, that's going to be really weird because, you know, that's not how I've been doing it. I've been, you know, kind of going, oh."
Yeah.
And it's maybe like kind of reflecting on yourself, like what is it that, you know, has this sitting with you? Are you nervous? And that's okay. So what do you normally do when you're nervous? I do burpees. So
Do ya? You
yeah.
crazy thing.
Yeah. So what is it that you normally do? Okay, that's okay. It's okay to be nervous. And, you know, if you feel you need an in, you can say, oh, I was listening to one of those parenting teens websites, or I read
Yeah.
something, and, you
Yep.
know, I kind of thought I might start, you know, by, you know, just having a check-in, or having a, you know, like, 3 great questions are, you know, what was something that you really enjoyed about today? What was something that you didn't enjoy? Because I think we always focus on the good stuff as humans, so that you're opening that space so that they can start telling you stuff that doesn't always fit the, you know, the
Yeah.
insta moment. And, you know, you know, did you do anything kind today? Did anyone do anything kind for you? And
Yeah.
then there's an always, you know, is there anything that you do different? You know, what would, yeah. And there are conversations that you can have, yeah, and don't feel you have to ring through all of them in one go.
No.
If you get an answer for one and that's all you do, it's just doing it, yeah, like, yeah, little bits. I think there is still this, you know, I think in a generation we've moved from,
Not
well,
talking.
yeah, not talking to like parents having no expectation on them really, because
Yeah.
they were parents, and that was, you know,
We
they
gave
had that.
birth to you. That was it.
Yeah, that was it. To now, like, you know, you're expected to talk, you're expected to, you know, teach, you're expected, you know, all the stuff that is part of parenting. But I think there's kind of a lens on it that comes with those Insta moments where it looks like everyone is doing it better than what you're doing it. And if you haven't had the resources yourself from growing up, you know, just, yeah, to acknowledge that it probably, I want it to be empowering for parents, that, you know, that you and I, San, you know, we do know
Oh,
what we're
look, it's
doing,
all
but we've
we've
had so much professional experience
practice.
and learnings and everything put into us, that it doesn't mean that you can't do it as a parent as well.
No,
If you're
just be curious.
if you're a reader, an amazing book is Parenting from the Inside Out, which looks at your own experiences of parenting and how they can, you know, or a great image is, it's Circle of Security stuff, but the shark music. That was, you know, or the volume is up. And that was our code word for myself and my partner. If we were having a bad parenting moment, we'd say, oh, your volume's up. Yeah, that was, again, that's down to Gal, the Parenting Inside Out stuff, that, you know, we all have like a volume, but our environment will either turn it up or turn it down. So
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
and then it's a non-shaming circuit breaker to go, okay, my volume's up. I need to, you know, go
Yeah.
and hide in the bathroom for 10, you know, for,
Yeah,
I
have a
need to,
moment.
yeah, walk away. I need to do some burpees. I need, you know, so
You weirdo.
I've yet
You're
to find anyone that I speak to that agrees that burpees will, yeah, just source
just get rid of
everything
that
out.
energy.
Yeah.
One burpee and I would be on the floor dead. And
Yeah.
I used to love burpees, mind you, but not in the last 4 years. I think you pointed out some really good stuff. Like, we've got all of this great advice, but really what it comes down to is just slowing down and having a moment, being with, and, you know, realizing that these are all really important conversations, and you don't have to be perfect at them. You just have to start them. And
Yeah.
most of the time, and one of the things I learned from being a child interviewer is just ask open questions, and whatever the question could be, hey, how does that make you feel? Or what did you think about that? Like, even when something you have no idea on, and you go, you know what? I've never actually considered that before. How about we go and look it up?
Yep.
And, you know, like, and that gives you a moment to just take a breather and go, okay, like, panic. Don't panic. You don't have to panic about it if you don't have a question. You know, most of us go, I don't know, go and Google it. But hey, you know what? I've never actually considered that question before. Like, when I was growing up, this is what was expected of me, but I don't want that for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like, I don't want you to have, you know, we're better than that now, or, you know, whatever thoughts going through your head, you know, just realize that how it was done isn't how it needs to be done.
Yeah. And my learning as an interviewer after doing like how much forensic training of, don't ask direct questions,
Yeah.
it's closed in, all the stuff that you'd be like, ask the 5 double, all this stuff that you'd have in your head. And it's kind of like that as a parent, if you think that you're
Yeah.
supposed to be doing all this. And and it was a learning myself, was to ask, and then what happened?
Yes.
Then what happened?
And
And
then
then what happened?
yeah,
And
my
they
daughter
just
said to
tell
me, stop
you.
interviewing me, when she knew that I was doing that all the time. She's like, stop interviewing me. I'm like, how did you know that I'm interviewing you?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also just like, and then what happened? Like we tend to stop kids from like continuing the story because we think that that's it. But sometimes like the before and the after, like tell me about that from the very beginning. Like where did, before it even started, the argument started, what was happening before that?
Yeah.
And then like you're getting the full story then, or, and then when it comes to like talking to them about coercive control or pornography or sex or whatever the topic is, or body safety or whatever, like just remember that just because you don't have to have all the answers. You just have to have the conversation. And it could be like, oh, well, what do you know about that? Like, has anyone ever talked to you about this before? Have you heard that word before?
Yeah.
What do you understand about that?
And
Like just
what do you think about that? Do you think that's,
like, isn't that a weird thing? Like people watching people naked, like weird.
Yeah.
Like, and what do you think you can do if it ever comes up and you feel uncomfortable? Like there's so much there, like so much there. I think I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah, no, I'm just looking at the time. I better go.
I know, I've got to go too. Right. So you've listed a few good resources. So Parenting from the Inside Out is a book. I'm going to put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk more. I think there was a website you shared with us as well, and I didn't write it down.
Then It Didn't Leave Any Marks.
Oh, It Didn't Leave Any Marks. That was a really good one as well. I'm going to share that.
And The Man Cave as well is in
The
New
Man
South
Cave's
Wales.
great. Yeah.
Yes, and they have a streaming for the boys as well. So they engage with boys directly.
Oh, they're on Discord, aren't they?
Yeah,
one of them. Twitch
one
or Discord.
streaming platform that they have. Sorry, I'm showing my age there, but that's a really good way where they're trying to directly engage boys as well. So
because that's where they're at.
Yeah.
And we need more good role models. Like for any dads or adult males in listening, we need more male role models to stand up and go, hey, this is cool. This is not cool. Like this is how we do it. This is what we don't do. Like, our boys need more great male role models. And there's so many good male role models out there. They just need to like put their hand up and say, like, this is not okay.
And I heard Hunter, he's the CEO of Man Cave, speak the day before yesterday, and it was just, we need men like that. And
I want you, Stan, we need you.
Yeah, we need our boys to hear you, because there is really a discourse all around toxic masculinity that it's, well, I'm not good enough, I'm not, so it's giving them what they need to be, as opposed to, yes, sometimes we do need to say that that's not okay, don't do that.
But what can we do better? How can we do change this? Like, it's not about, and I don't, you've got a son, I talk to my daughter's boyfriend all the time about this stuff. I'm like, it's not about you being wrong, right, or any other things, but how can we do it better?
Yeah.
Are we okay with how it is right now? Like, let's just ask some questions and see where we go with it, and if it sits right with you. Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. I think we need to do this again. We'll have to book one for like 6 months, and we'll go in completely different direction, because your experience is so varied and so amazing. And and I really appreciate every second of your time.
Oh, and thank you for having me. I love meeting like-minded, people that, are really real as well about parenting and, the risks, and doing it from an empowered perspective, because, I would have liked to have more input like this when, when I was, And even as a new parent as well, like having those voices of, wisdom that have done it before are not necessarily as accessible. So I think,
we don't have the communities we used to, and not like, don't get me wrong, sometimes the wrong voices aren't there's some really loud voices that are the right information. So wherever you get that from, whether it be a podcast or following someone on social media, surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals is really important to have a better go at this.
Yeah.
Because it's a friggin' mission. All right, mate. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Kristi. Take care.
Bye.
See you.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. Education empowers children and it empowers parents, and education prevents abuse. That is why I'm here, and that is why you are here. So thank you. If you want any further information or support, follow me on social media, either under Kristi McVie or KPAU social media accounts. I'll put the links in the show notes. You can also purchase a signed copy of my book, Operation Kid Safe, via the website at www.cape-au.com. Also on my website is a free ebook titled 10 Tips to Keep Your Kids Safe from Abuse, and self-paced courses for parents to help you in your journey of child abuse prevention. Don't forget to join our free Facebook group called Operation Kid Safe Parenting Group. Please see the show notes for any extra information, links and help should you be looking for extra support. Thank you once again for giving a shit about preventing child sexual abuse. See you next time.